This week's Four Questions Journalist Spotlight is brought to you by Leff's Atlanta Media, Atlanta's best journalist database. Subscribe at leffsatlantamedia.com.
Welcome to another edition of our Four Questions Journalist Spotlight. We are talking today with Dawn Montgomery with the Atlanta Voice. Good afternoon, Dawn.
Afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I know we've been trying to schedule this for a little bit, and it's all my fault because I actually took a vacation. So,
hey, listen, vacations are good.
it was great to get away for a week.
You're a hard working.
It's crazy sometimes, but being busy is a good thing, right?
Right. It is.
Yeah. Well, let's start first with tell me a little bit about your background and kind of your little bit of work history and what brought you to the Voice. And then we'll talk, and then I want you to tell us a little bit about what is the Atlanta Voice and a little bit about the great history that the paper has.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for asking that. I'm originally from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I grew up in the Pine Belt area, which consists of Petal, Ellisville, Laurel, Mississippi, those areas around that part of Mississippi. And during that time of growing up in Hattiesburg, my grandmother, she was a writer for a local newspaper, the Hattiesburg American. And at a young age of 9, 10, 11, and 12, I got to be a copy editor and kind of edit, some of her writings and things of that nature. And it was kind of where I really fell in love with print, between seeing that USA Today and print in that small town of Mississippi is pretty exciting. I do know that originally I did not want to be a journalist. Originally, I actually wanted to be the governor of Mississippi, believe it or not.
It's not too late.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
But I really wanted to work in politics, and what shifted my mindset in politics from being more so a politician. I went and did an internship in DC. It was right after I did Presidential Classroom, which no longer exists, but it would send the top juniors in high schools around America to DC for a week to enjoy different aspects of, our government, as well as just as being young leaders. And so went up there, had a good time doing that. And then I was actually invited back to do an internship with Department of Education and with another department. And I kind of was one of those interns that was very nosy. And one day I saw Trent Lott, he was my senator at the time in Mississippi, having lunch with one of the other senators that you'd see him on the news and they're bickering all the time, right? And so at the time I was like, okay, why would he be eating with him? If they don't like each other. And I did a little digging and come to find out they were both working on a bill together, but they were both butting heads on the Senate floor about it. And I did a little more research, and now I might remember now. Social media is not around,
yeah. But
I'm barely getting the hang of the internet at the time. And I found out that, I read a story, I don't know if it was Washington Post or New York Times, where it kind of leaked out that they were partnering on the bill behind all of that. And it just blew my mind. I was like, okay, I can't do that. Besides, and it might seem small to a lot of people, but for me, coming from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and knowing, our community leaders are important. Our politicians, we look up to them. I know Mayor Johnny Dupree was one of my biggest role models in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And he just set the tone for me to kind of feel like I could run for something. But eventually just realizing, the politics of it all, I eventually fell in love with communications.
Yeah, that's good. All right.
The things that I was finding out, it was well, I can write about that. I saw this or I saw that, and then my love for writing kind of started from there. I actually went to Fort Valley State my freshman year, and my major at the time was ag econ. And I came over from Mississippi to this HBCU in the middle of Georgia. And it brought me closer to the city of Atlanta. And so throughout some life changes and some happenings and transitions that happen in life, I ended up coming back to Atlanta and living here and going to school at Oglethorpe and finishing my bachelor's degree there.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yep.
I am
Great
a
school.
I
Yeah.
am a petrel at heart.
I was gonna say petrels. Is that petrol?
Yeah.
Petrels? Okay. All right.
It took me a while to figure out what a petrel was. But
It has wings and flies, right?
again, I'm from Mississippi, so
You don't have any of those there?
I've never seen them. No, this is a Mississippi country girl farm. You know, the birds we see are flying up top or chicken walking around. You know what I'm saying? So,
I want to say I think those are more coastal birds, maybe.
yes, and so
Yeah.
it took a trip to Savannah for me to see a petrel. Yes, and so that one trip to Savannah and understanding, you know, I think his name was John Oglethorpe. I could be wrong. I hope the Oglethorpe alum don't come after me, but
He was the first governor of Georgia, maybe, or was he the founder?
Look,
Kind of something like that. He was one of the first settlers or something like that.
kind of like learning that history in Savannah, and then still, you know, attending Oglethorpe at the time. It kind of like made a bigger connection to me because I love history, and so at the time while I was at Oglethorpe, I was a professional model. Like I did hair campaigns,
Oh, very cool.
music videos.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah, the face.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was still writing for publications, magazines. I had worked under a couple of known journalists around the city of Atlanta as a mentee or a researcher to assist them on projects. And I actually enjoyed that. And so my membership with the Atlanta Press Club was very crucial in me understanding what type of writing career I ended up wanting. And so that brings me to the Atlanta Voice, because around the time that I heard about the Atlanta Voice was about 2011. I was newly married. We had, me and my husband, my ex-husband had a law firm that we were getting off the ground. I was just graduating from Oglethorpe, where I want to say it was Ambassador Andrew Young was our speaker, as well as Mayor Kasim Reed at the time. And Kasim Reed actually went to college with my ex-husband. So there were so many of these.
Keeping those pieces all together.
Right. Listen, it was so many links here. And so, but at the time I heard about the Atlanta Voice, and I was like, wow, that's a publication that I can see myself write for or work for. And was looking around for connections to the Atlanta Voice, hadn't really seen their presence on digital. And a couple of years later, after I had created my own sports media company, I found out that the Atlanta Voice was looking for a sports editor. And I was like, listen, I'm ready. Like, I've been looking for this company for about 4 or 5 years at the time. And at that time, the late Marshall Lattimore, who's our former editor-in-chief, who passed it earlier this year, brought me in, and I was in there. My interview was probably 5 hours. And I say it was 5 hours long just because after my initial like 30 minutes going over resume, talking and going over these things, and then meeting our publisher, Mrs. Ware, it ended up being, okay, can you stay for the rest of the day? Because we're ready for you to start. So yeah, I got my start there. And I think one of the biggest things that I can say about the Atlanta Voice is its history and its legacy, and knowing that, you know, Mrs. Ware is just, she's that woman in the community that you want to learn from, that you want to be, you know, shoulder to shoulder with, to understand how her father helped co-found this publication, and how she's second generation, you know, publisher to this publication, and the meaning of this publication. Not only is it just Black owned, but just it's the heart of, you know, a lot of Black neighborhoods around the city of Atlanta. Where people are still wanting a print piece. They want, you know, the physical aspect of something to read. So I think at the time of me coming in with Marshall, as well as Itoro Umantwin, who is our digital managing editor now, coming in with them and a few others, we came in with a digital force. We were like, hey, we've got to get your digital presence going. We've got to, you know, Marshall came in and revamped the whole paper overnight while Mrs. Ware was on vacation. You know, so she's coming back, and she's like, oh, this is nice, but when did you have time to do this? And so, it just speaks to her leadership and her ability to adapt, according to what the company would need to kind of grow another 56 years. So,
yeah, because the paper's hitting it's 50 something years old now, right?
56, yes.
Yeah.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. So
And I should give credit to Marshall, and I want to mention that the Atlanta Press Club is going to be inducting him into their Hall of Fame
yes.
Soon. I think it's next month too.
Yes, November the 11th.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So if you were going to describe The Voice, obviously it's focused on Atlanta's Black community.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe the kind of the purpose and focus and the kinds of stories that the mission and what you want to do?
Well, I mean, based on how it was founded during a time of civil rights and a lot of people not being able to, share their stories or share what was happening around certain parts of Atlanta, we're the voice of the unheard. Now, I know, digital times now it's, our voices are being heard digitally, being read and seen digitally, but I do still feel like there's still some people who don't feel as if, their stories are being told or their lifestyles aren't being reflected, or there's not full representation of what they would want to see of other people that look like them. So I know that that's, what we're doing, how we're serving our purpose every day, while also partnering with other media outlets in whatever capacity we could do to expand how our voices are being heard every day.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this a couple of times, but to find the paper, it's theatlantavoice.com.
Yes.
If you just type atlantavoice.com, that doesn't work. So theatlantavoice.com, and it'll connect you to the digital platform. So you and I were talking recently about kind of some video components you're doing. So talk a little bit about kind of how that works, and I'm going to give you the segue into the election work that you guys have been doing.
All right. Sweet. I know. When I came in, it was about 2000, early 2000 or late 2017. And when I first got there, I want to say the election for mayor was going on during that time as well. And right. It was a very fun time because that was Keisha Lance Bottoms as well as Mary Norwood, who were running, head to head for mayor. And there were just so many things that I could learn on site. I have a sports background. I actually do have deep research, skill set and all of these things in history. So I pay attention to, dates on this day in history type of things,
Gotcha.
And so during that time, it was really one of those things where we could do a lot of things in print. But this go round for the election cycle, Mrs. Ware challenged our digital team to, really make us an election central hub. And that's what we called it. We just ran with that hashtag election central. You find a lot of our things under there. We're sharing updates and news via social media. We're gathering information almost daily from different campaigns and rebuilding, somewhat of a bridge of communication between our publication as well as the city as a whole. Because that was also something that I saw coming in. I knew that Mrs. Ware had her own relationships and that we could kind of, walk in the door and, stand on that. But to have like that foundation and to build upon that, I feel like, when people start seeing you make some moves and creating the content that we're creating and, really putting our foot down to say, hey, listen, we're here. We've been here. You may not recognize us. You may not have seen us out and about, but we're finding ways to make sure that people understand that we're getting certain sides of every story that maybe someone else is missing. So I will say from a digital aspect, that's been fun to kind of somewhat be like a co-producer or the executive producer or the reporter or the host or, to plan with like people like Martell Sharp, who is our director of public relations. And he's just so smart and savvy in knowing how to push some of these things forward and getting it in front of people. Our director of visuals is is Terrell Torrance, and he's been our guy to kind of like make everything look amazing. Like it's, just revamping just everything that we have going on, and partnering with our director of digital media, who is Alexis Grace, and having her on board to, kind of execute how these things will be pushed out via social media as well as newsletters and things.
So we're going to get through I started saying we're going to get through the election in a couple of days, but there's going to be a runoff.
Yes.
I would be surprised if we don't have for mayor, definitely, since we have 14 candidates, and I think they're all polling at like less than 25%. So we're going to see a runoff. But beyond that, assuming we get beyond that by the end of November, I think it was November 30th. Is that when the election?
Yeah, because that's the runoff, November 30th.
November 30th. Okay. What's next? What are some important issues that you want to focus on after we get through the election?
Well, after we get through the election, I know one of the biggest things that we will be getting ready to do is kind of share a new look of the Atlanta Voice. That's going to be one of the first things that we're going to get started on. I know that we're also working on a Given Tuesday campaign, because even though, we have done some things during the pandemic to get to the point of still being able to print our publication, we still need funding. We still need to create other avenues of revenue to come in the door so that we can continue some of the things that we are doing. I know that one of the biggest things that I'm researching now is production. We've been with us playing with, the interviews that we've done with some of the top 5 mayoral candidates from the different polls that we've seen. Those videos have done really, really well on social. So we're seeing that there is really a need for our publication to, catch up, with other digital platforms that are, mostly digital, mostly streaming or doing other things. So that's going to be huge. I know another issue that we're really paying attention to is affordable housing, as well as poverty. We did do a documentary, thanks to Facebook, and if I'm not mistaken, Google as well, some funding there, where we did a documentary called Peach Tree and Pine, which is on our website as well. So having the capacity to produce these type of things outside of producing a weekly free publication in print, that's kind of where our focus is going to go towards, and moving forward and telling those type of stories.
Yeah, you were one of the beneficiaries of Facebook's journalism program, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I remember that. Yeah. And before I forget, and I want you to kind of run through all your social media tags. So how do folks find you on, Facebook's easy. Type in the Atlanta Voice. How about Instagram? How do we find you on this?
The Atlanta Voice, Twitter, The Atlanta Voice,
okay.
YouTube, The Atlanta Voice, LinkedIn, The Atlanta Voice.
Well, that's good. See, good job, Martell. You got all consistent branding. All right. That's awesome. I can give you a shout out to my friend Martell.
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about you, Dawn.
Oh wow.
So what's something fun or cool that people might not know about Dawn?
You
mentioned something to me earlier that before we started taping, that something you used to do that was kind of cool. You said you were a model.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, yeah. It's funny because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the platform Versus, where it takes one music artist.
Yeah. Yep.
So one of the funny things that just recently happened to me not too long ago was when Soulja Boy and Bow Wow were going against each other. And when it was announced, so many people tagged me because my following has been following me for years. And they were tagging me. They were like, oh my God, they've got to play the video that you were in. And I'm just like, I'm floored because people are still like, finding out that I was in that video, or that I was on a hair campaign and billboards and things of that nature. And even like I have a 16-year-old, I have a 10-year-old, and I have a 2-year-old. My 16-year-old still plays pulls up videos on YouTube to share with his friends, like, this is my mom, And my 10-year-old,
that's cool.
listen, my 10-year-old, he's like, she was on a billboard. I was on a billboard for a hair campaign. He did his own hair campaign right before the pandemic for Just For Me. And he was on a billboard in Charlotte, and we got a chance to see that. So it's just one of those things where, it keeps giving. Yeah. And I'm so glad that I did it with class.
That's something like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Yeah.
Listen.
Something that you're comfortable showing your kids, right?
Yes, the internet lives forever for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else kind of fun hobby or things you like? Something more recent?
Yeah, more recently, I would have to say, I've been a huge fan of American Crime Story on FX, and they have the impeachment going, the docuseries.
Okay, I haven't seen that one yet.
And Monica Lewinsky is actually the executive producer of it. And I think a lot of my followers are realizing that, those of us who grew up during that time, even if we were in upper elementary, middle school, we remember all of that. Like, literally, I know for me, I remember every bit of that. Yeah. And so one of the cool things that I've kind of just shared on my social that most people aren't understanding how much research I actually do is I'm going back and finding the actual factual, things to kind of go with the episodes. Like, no, that's not how this happened, but this is how this happened, or I'm sharing my take on different things. But the biggest thing in relation to that and Bill Clinton's presidency is I'm a huge John F. Kennedy stan. And it's not from a stand of I fully support everything he did. No, I have this fascination of how his father was able to do what he did as a family man and build this literally this dynasty. I call it a dynasty. Dynasty, this political dynasty of a family, and the curse, the family curse, the things that happen during these times. It's one of those things where I'm fascinated by that. And so whenever I have free time and I'm reading whatever I want to read, generally it's either a new Kennedy book that's come out, or it's about some, historical moment in government and things of that nature. And I have to give a huge shout out to my junior high government teacher. No, she was my government teacher in my junior year. Let me correct that. Mrs. Roney. And if I'm not mistaken, she passed not too long ago, but at South Jones High School, that was somebody who really government is everything. You need to know these things and blah, blah, blah. And so, and it just proves, because literally if you're on Twitter every day, everybody thinks they know how the government works and you realize they don't.
Yeah. So, tell me about it.
Right. So as a journalist, it's one of those things where it's I'm so glad that I did grow up, where I grew up, and I could really learn the basics of how a lot of things run and how they go. And it's very important in the work that I do as a journalist.
That's great. All right. So let's jump to the lightning round.
Here we go.
So you get the choice, either last book you read or last podcast you listened to.
You said it's a lightning round, but I got to pull it up.
All right.
Last podcast I listened to, The Doctor's Pharmacy, with Dr. Mark Hyman. And that was recommended to me by one of my followers, and I've just been hooked ever since.
And what's that one about?
Generally, he shares different things about different issues, and he explains them in detail. I know the most recent thing that he has up for this past Wednesday, was why our neglected lymph system is a key to optimal health. And he has two other doctors on there. I haven't listened to it yet, but that's one of my podcasts. Go to.
All right. Favorite local restaurant?
Oh, okay. It's not in Atlanta.
You got to pick one. Okay. It can be not in Atlanta. That's okay.
Okay, but it's in Decatur.
Decatur? Okay, that's good.
Downtown Decatur.
That's local.
Number 246.
246. Okay.
Everything. That's the name.
246. Is that what it's called? 246. What kind of food?
Pasta, Italian, pizza, best wine selection. The vibe is always perfect.
All right, that's not too far from me. I'll have to check that out. All right, favorite guilty pleasure.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. I have to say, I don't get to watch it in real time, but when I can catch up, binge watching reality TV shows.
All right. Do
Yeah,
you have one that's your favorite?
the Real Housewives
All right. All right.
franchise.
That's a hot one. All right. Favorite good what's a good local getaway? Someplace just a little quiet or your zen spot?
So I love finding lakes around the city. Whether it's like finding, nearby. I know that one of my biggest things that I love to do with my kids in general are parks. We love parks. My we go to parks around Decatur. Anytime we can find some green, we're there. So in general, those are my quick getaways. But me personally, for me by myself, a quick getaway would always technically be like a tiny home that I could find to stay in overnight in the city. I love visiting different parts of Atlanta that has like these little pockets of tiny homes that people host.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. So is there anything else we haven't talked about you or in particular about the Atlanta Voice that we should mention? Anything coming up or story that you think I'd love to write a story about this, but I haven't gotten to it yet? I know you got to, I mean, it's hard. You got only so many pages and probably so many ideas, right?
Well, I know the biggest thing for me is me personally. A lot of people know me from sports, and I kind of stepped away from sports because of a health crisis back in 2019. And I've been sharing that story and sharing some things that happened with a troubled pregnancy that I had with my 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And a documentary was just released in partnership with Black Women's Health Initiative, as well as Strayer University, who is using the documentary to help educate some of their students on overcoming racial bias in healthcare. So I know personally, I'm just, looking to kind of pay attention to how I want people to see my work, how I share my personal stories. I know I have my own YouTube channel that I've neglected since I've been in this new position at the Atlanta Voice as Chief Brand Officer, but I'm getting ready to pick that back up and kind of, take some time to really get people to pay attention to some various issues that I really care about as well.
Is that documentary somewhere where people can see it?
Yes, it's actually on Black Women's Health Initiative website, and I think it's bwhi.org.
Okay.
And it's on their YouTube channel. I know that I'm going to start sharing it shortly and things of that nature. So yeah, that's really important to me right now. I know with the Atlanta Voice, some things that we're working on, we're pushing more education related stories. We have a Report for America journalist by the name of Madeline Thickpen. So one thing that she is partnering with one of our interns from Georgia State right now is the protests that are happening in the AUC with the Clark Atlanta students, Spelman, Morehouse, ITC. And I just think it's important that if they're literally right behind us, we're down the street. So if something's happening in our backyard, we should be able to, get over there and kind of give, some first response type stories, and here's our point of view and here's the facts, So yeah.
Excellent. Well, we've been talking today with Dawn Montgomery,
yes,
the Atlanta Voice. Oh, Dawn, what is your actual title? I forgot to ask you that at the beginning.
Chief Brand Officer. I came back earlier this year, a little bit. I want to say the plan was to come while Marshall was alive, and
right.
He passed the week that I was getting started.
Yeah.
And I came in as Vice President of Operations. So basically, my move up in the organization was I was sports editor to managing editor, and then VP of Operations to now Chief Brand Officer. And understanding coming in the door that there had been so much growth for the Atlanta Voice over the past 3 or 4 years, I think it says a lot that they have a Chief Brand Officer, a Director of Public Relations, like they're creating this org chart that is helping them expand the capabilities of what the company can do. So I'm doing daily research on, how can I represent the company? How can I do what I do personally and still, assist in being the face of this publication, as well as making sure that company culture reflects all of that. So it's been a task, and I've been really, really, really enjoying it, honestly.
Well, and I guess, yeah.
Weird.
No, it's good that you're enjoying your job. That's a great thing.
But
I would be worried if you weren't enjoying your job. That would not be good. So you're kind of like you're the editor, but you're also the news director, because you're like a TV station too.
Right.
Yeah,
so it's really been fun, because it's, I think a lot of times when you have growing pains in a company or an organization that you're a part of, you don't really get an opportunity to kind of, flex other skills or flex your muscle to kind of expand a little bit. Right. And a lot of times with growing pains, people feel stagnant. And one of the great things that I'm seeing with Mrs. Ware, Mr. Washington, the president of the Atlanta Voice, is that, they're wanting to learn more. They're wanting to expand. They're wanting to, come out of a mom and pop type of mentality of way of business into a media conglomerate. You get what I'm saying? So it's one of the
you got to
be a part of that is huge.
You got to be the media conglomerate now. You got to be multimedia. I mean, you're appealing. I mean, you're appealing to an older demo that's used to reading you in print, but the younger demo is they're going to read you right here, right?
All day.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Dawn, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and
thank you.
It's been another edition of our 4 Questions Journalist Spotlight. Tune in next week for another great interview.
Thank you.